If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. Chapter 1, Beginnings, Finding Your Voice. Part 1, The Blank Page Promise. When Virginia Woolf stared at her first blank page each morning, she described feeling both terror and exhilaration. That empty sheet held infinite possibility, yet demanded something of her she wasn't always sure she could give. This dual nature of the blank page, simultaneously inviting and intimidating, captures the essence of why starting a journal can feel so profound. The blank page carries weight because it represents potential energy waiting to be released. Unlike a conversation where words disappear into air, or a text message that gets buried in digital noise, the journal page holds your thoughts with permanence. Kathleen Adams, founder of the Center for Journal Therapy, noticed this phenomenon when working with hundreds of clients. Many would sit frozen before their first entry, paralyzed by the fear that their words weren't worthy of the pristine page. But here's what Adams discovered through decades of research. The magic happens not in perfection, but in permission. The moment you allow yourself to write poorly, to ramble, to contradict yourself, the page transforms from judge to confidant. Consider Maya Angelou's approach. She would arrive at her writing space with a yellow legal pad and deliberately mess up the first page, scribbling, crossing out, making it imperfect from the start. This ritual freed her from the tyranny of pristine beginnings. The therapeutic value of simply starting has been documented extensively. James Pennebaker's groundbreaking studies at the University of Texas revealed that people who wrote about traumatic experiences for just 15 minutes over 4 days showed improved immune function and decreased doctor visits. The key wasn't what they wrote, but that they began writing at all. Creating rituals around your first entry can ease this threshold anxiety. Tristine Rayner, author of The New Diary, suggests choosing one specific pen that becomes your journal companion. The tactile familiarity of holding the same instrument creates muscle memory that signals your brain to shift into reflective mode. Some writers light a candle, others make tea, but the ritual matters less than its consistency. The blank page also invites experimentation in ways that filled pages cannot. When everything is possible, you might discover aspects of your voice you didn't know existed. Stream of consciousness writing, pioneered by Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way, demonstrates this beautifully. By writing continuously without editing, people often surprise themselves with insights that emerge from their subconscious. What transforms fear into excitement is reframing the blank page as a laboratory rather than a stage. In laboratories, failed experiments provide as much information as successful ones. Your journal operates under the same principle. Those meandering entries about daily frustrations might seem insignificant, but they often reveal patterns that become clear only in retrospect. The promise of the blank page isn't perfection, it's presence. Each time you put pen to paper, you're practicing the radical act of paying attention to your own experience. In a world that constantly pulls your focus outward, this simple gesture of filling white space with your thoughts becomes both rebellion and refuge. Part 2. Dear Future Me. When NASA astronaut Scott Kelly returned from his year-long mission aboard the International Space Station, he discovered something unexpected among his personal effects. A collection of letters he'd written to himself before launch. These messages from his earthbound self to his space-traveling future self had sustained him through isolation, wonder, and the profound shift in perspective that comes from seeing Earth as a fragile blue marble suspended in darkness. Writing letters to your future self might seem like an unusual practice, but it represents one of the most powerful tools in personal reflection. Unlike regular journal entries that capture the present moment, these letters create a deliberate conversation across time. They allow you to offer guidance, share hopes, and provide comfort to the person you're becoming. The practice gained scientific credibility when psychologist Hal Hershfield's research at UCLA demonstrated that people who could vividly imagine their future selves made better long-term decisions. Writing to your future self creates this connection naturally. When you put pen to paper with Dear Future Me at the top, you're forced to consider who that person might be and what they might need to hear. Consider starting with a simple time frame, perhaps 6 months or a year ahead. What would you want that future version of yourself to remember about this moment? Maya Angelou kept what she called her courage letters, notes to herself during difficult periods that she'd rediscover months later. She described finding them as receiving messages from a friend who knew me better than anyone else. The beauty of these letters lies in their complete privacy. You can confess fears that feel too vulnerable to share, celebrate small victories that others might not understand, or offer yourself the forgiveness you struggle to accept from others. Write about the dreams that feel too ambitious to speak aloud, or the changes you're afraid to make, but know you must. Some people write birthday letters to themselves, creating an annual tradition of reflection and intention setting. Others write during transitions, starting a new job, ending a relationship, or facing a health challenge. The timing matters less than the honesty. When you eventually rediscover these letters, they become time capsules of your emotional landscape. You'll often find that the worries that consumed you have resolved in ways you never expected, while dreams you mentioned casually have quietly taken root and grown. The letters serve as evidence of your resilience and evolution. Try writing your first letter tonight. Begin simply, "Dear future me, today I am," and let your thoughts flow. Seal it in an envelope with a date to open it. Then trust that the person who reads it will understand exactly what the writer needed to say. Part 3. Tracing your story. When Maya discovered her grandmother's journals in a dusty attic box, she found more than faded ink on yellowed pages. She found a woman she'd never known, a dreamer who wrote poetry at midnight, someone who questioned everything, who struggled with the same fears Maya faced decades later. Those journals became a bridge across generations, showing Maya that her story wasn't isolated, but part of a larger human narrative that deserved attention and care. Looking back through your own experiences can feel like archaeological work. You're digging through layers of memory, brushing dust off forgotten moments, trying to piece together how you became who you are today. This process requires patience and gentle curiosity rather than harsh judgment. Remember that memories aren't perfect recordings. They're impressions filtered through time and emotion. Start with your earliest clear memory and write it down exactly as you remember it. Don't worry about accuracy or significance. Focus on sensory details, what you saw, heard, smelled. Research from psychologist Dr. Martin Conway shows that autobiographical memories become more vivid and emotionally accessible when we engage multiple senses in the recollection process. Consider the spaces that shaped you: your childhood bedroom, the route to school, your family's dinner table. These environments hold stories about your developing identity. Author Pat Conroy traced his complicated relationship with his father by writing about their shared fishing trips, finding patterns in those memories that explain decades of family dynamics. Notice the relationships that appear repeatedly in your recollections. Your first best friend taught you something about loyalty or betrayal. That teacher who believed in you when others didn't may have planted seeds of confidence that bloomed years later. Even difficult relationships offer valuable insights. What did conflict teach you about boundaries? How did loss shape your understanding of what matters? Pay attention to moments when you felt most like yourself. These glimpses of authenticity often occur in childhood before we learn to perform for others. Maybe you felt most genuine while building elaborate sandcastles, writing stories in secret, or defending someone who was being teased. These moments reveal core values that may have gotten buried under life's expectations. Write about the hardships honestly but with compassion for your younger self. Viktor Frankl discovered meaning in his concentration camp experience by examining how suffering shaped his understanding of human resilience. Your challenges, while different, also contain wisdom about your capacity to endure and grow. What patterns emerge as you trace your story? Do you consistently choose adventure over security? Have you always been drawn to helping others heal? These patterns aren't limitations. They're clues about your authentic direction. By mapping your personal history, you create a foundation for writing future chapters with intention rather than accident. Part 4. Trusting your words. When Maya Angelou first started writing, She filled notebooks with fragments, false starts, and half-formed thoughts that never saw daylight. Her manuscripts were riddled with crossouts, margin notes, and pages torn from spiral-bound journals. Yet these imperfect, unpolished words eventually became some of the most powerful literature of our time. The secret wasn't in getting it right immediately. It was in trusting that her authentic voice was worth preserving, even in its rawest form. Your journal doesn't need to impress anyone. This simple truth liberates thousands of people who've abandoned journaling after a few attempts, convinced their writing wasn't good enough. But Julia Cameron, author of The Artist's Way, built her entire morning pages practice around this principle. She encourages writers to fill 3 pages every morning with whatever comes to mind. Complaints about the weather, grocery lists, random thoughts about yesterday's conversation. The goal isn't literary excellence. It's clearing mental space and honoring whatever emerges. Research by Dr. James Pennebaker at the University of Texas demonstrates that expressive writing improves both physical and emotional health, regardless of grammar or structure. His studies show that people who write about traumatic experiences for just 15 minutes daily experience stronger immune function, reduced blood pressure, and improved mood. The healing happens in the expression itself, not in the polished final product. Consider adopting what Natalie Goldberg calls writing down the bones, capturing thoughts exactly as they arise without editing or censoring. When Anne Frank wrote in her diary, she included spelling mistakes, crossed out words, and stream of consciousness ramblings about her daily frustrations. These imperfections make her writing more human, more relatable, more real than any carefully crafted essay could be. Your handwriting might be messy. Your thoughts might jump from topic to topic mid-sentence. You might start writing about your morning coffee and end up processing a childhood memory. This isn't failure, it's how minds actually work. Christine Rayner, in her classic guide to diary writing, calls these tangents golden threads that lead to unexpected insights about ourselves. Free writing exercises can help you trust your natural voice. Set a timer for 10 minutes and write continuously without stopping to think, edit, or correct anything. When your pen stops moving, you stop connecting with your authentic thoughts. Virginia Woolf used this technique to access what she called the cotton wool of everyday experience, the small moments that reveal larger truths about how we move through the world. The confidence you build by trusting your words on paper transfers to every conversation, email, and presentation in your life. When journalist Joan Didion started keeping notebooks as a young woman, she wrote down overheard conversations, random observations, and personal reactions without judgment. This practice taught her to trust her instincts about what mattered, eventually shaping her distinctive voice as one of America's most respected writers. Your words have value simply because they're yours. The spelling errors, emotional outbursts, and incomplete thoughts all belong in your journal. They're not bugs in the system. They're features of authentic self-expression. Chapter 2, The Heart of the Journal. Everyday Magic Part 1, Little Rituals That Matter. When Virginia Woolf described her morning ritual of writing 3 pages before breakfast, she wasn't just documenting thoughts. She was creating a sacred boundary between sleep and the demands of her day. Research from Stanford University shows that consistent morning routines activate the brain's prefrontal cortex more effectively than sporadic activities, making small rituals surprisingly powerful tools for transformation. The most successful journalers rarely write in sterile environments. Maya Angelou rented a hotel room stripped of everything except a Bible, thesaurus, yellow pads, and a bottle of sherry, creating her personal sanctuary for words. You don't need a hotel room, but you do need intentionality. The ritual begins before the pen touches paper. Consider the simple act of brewing tea while your journal waits open nearby. This isn't just pleasant, it's psychological preparation. Dr. Francesca Gino's research at Harvard Business School demonstrates that rituals reduce anxiety and increase feelings of control, even when the activities themselves seem arbitrary. The tea ceremony becomes a bridge between your scattered daily mind and focused reflection. Morning pages, popularized by Julia Cameron, work precisely because they happen before the world intrudes. When journalist Tim Ferriss started writing 3 pages each morning, he discovered patterns in his thinking that evening reflection had missed. The tired brain filters differently than the fresh one. Which version of yourself do you want documenting your inner landscape? Lighting a candle transforms ordinary moments into ceremony. Sister Helen Prajan writes by candlelight, not for romance, but for focus. The flame creates a visual anchor that keeps her present. Neuroscience supports this. Consistent environmental cues help establish neural pathways that make behaviors automatic rather than effortful. The timing matters less than the consistency. Cheryl Strayed wrote wild in 15-minute bursts between her children's activities, always with the same purple pen in the same notebook. Her ritual wasn't elaborate, but it was hers. The specificity creates what researchers call implementation intentions, detailed plans that increase follow-through rates by up to 300%. What happens when life disrupts your perfect routine? The most resilient journalers build flexibility into their rituals. Instead of "I write at 6 a.m. with coffee," try "I write first thing with something warm to drink." The essence remains while the details adapt. Your journal becomes more than paper when surrounded by meaningful ritual. It transforms into a trusted friend waiting at the appointed time, in the designated space, accompanied by familiar sensations. This isn't about perfection. It's about creating conditions where your authentic voice can emerge consistently, one small ceremony at a time. The magic isn't in the candle or the tea. It's in the decision to treat your inner dialogue as worthy of reverence. Part 2. Finding patterns, creating change. When Maya first started tracking her moods in a simple notebook, she had no idea she was about to discover something that would fundamentally shift her relationship with anxiety. 3 months later, looking back at the colorful dots and brief notes scattered across those pages, she could finally see what had been invisible to her stressed mind. Your journal holds more than daily events and fleeting thoughts. It contains a treasure map of your patterns, waiting to be discovered. Maya's breakthrough came when she realized her anxiety always peaked on Sunday evenings, triggered not by Monday morning meetings, but by the lack of structure in her weekends. This pattern had repeated for years, yet remained hidden until she started paying attention on paper. Pattern recognition begins with simple observation. Rather than analyzing while you write, let your journal accumulate data naturally. Kathleen Adams, founder of the Center for Journal Therapy, discovered that clients who reviewed their entries monthly found patterns invisible during daily writing. The distance created by time allows clarity to emerge. Start with basic tracking. Note your energy levels using a simple scale. Mark your mood with colors, or jot down what triggered strong emotions. Virginia Woolf used her diary to track her temperature of being, noting how different activities, people, and weather affected her mental state. These seemingly mundane observations revealed profound insights about her creative rhythms and emotional needs. The magic happens during review sessions. Set aside time monthly to read previous entries with curiosity rather than judgment. Christine Rayner, author of The New Diary, suggests looking for repeated words, phrases, or themes. Circle recurring complaints. Highlight moments of joy, and notice what consistently drains or energizes you. Dr. James Pennebaker's research at the University of Texas revealed that people who identified patterns in their writing showed improved immune function and decreased stress hormones. The act of recognition itself creates change. When you see that criticism from your manager always leads to 2 days of poor sleep, you can prepare differently for feedback sessions. Small shifts create significant change. After recognizing her Sunday anxiety pattern, Maya began planning one structured activity each weekend. This tiny adjustment reduced her weekly anxiety by 60%, according to her mood tracker. She didn't overhaul her entire lifestyle. She made one informed tweak based on her journal's evidence. Beware of forcing patterns where none exist. Sometimes your journal reveals randomness, and that's valuable information too. Julia Cameron, creator of Morning Pages, warns against turning self-reflection into self-criticism. Patterns should illuminate, not imprison. Create gentle experiments based on your discoveries. If you notice that phone calls with certain people consistently leave you drained, try limiting those conversations to mornings when your energy is higher. If creative insights emerge during walks, Schedule walking meetings when possible. Your patterns are not permanent sentences, but invitations for growth. The same journal that reveals a tendency toward self-doubt can document your journey toward confidence. Each pattern you identify becomes a doorway to intentional change, one small step at a time. Part 3. Lists, Doodles, and Dreams. When artist Georgia O'Keeffe felt stuck, she didn't reach for a paintbrush. She made lists. "I can paint one of those disorderly lists," she once wrote, transforming mundane grocery items and daily tasks into creative fuel that eventually inspired her botanical masterpieces. Your journal doesn't need to be a pristine collection of perfectly formed sentences. Some of the most profound insights emerge from the margins, literally and figuratively. Ryder Carroll discovered this while struggling with attention challenges in school, eventually developing what became the bullet journal method through simple symbols, lists, and rapid logging that worked with his brain rather than against it. Lists possess an almost magical quality. They transform the overwhelming chaos of thoughts into manageable, actionable pieces. Research from UCLA's psychology department shows that the simple act of writing down worries reduces their emotional impact by up to 20%. When anxiety feels like a storm, a gratitude list becomes your anchor. When dreams feel too big, a step-by-step action list makes them approachable. Consider keeping a Books That Changed Me list alongside titles you want to read. Track small victories next to grand ambitions. One woman in Kathleen Adams' workshops maintained a "Things That Made Me Smile Today" list for 6 months and found herself naturally gravitating toward joy-inducing activities without conscious effort. Visual elements serve as bridges between conscious and unconscious thought. Christine Rayner observed that clients who added doodles to their writing often experienced breakthroughs that pure text couldn't provide. A simple sketch of how you felt yesterday might communicate more than paragraphs of analysis. Mind maps can reveal connections your linear mind missed entirely. The key is permission. Permission to be messy, colorful, and experimental. Meera Lee Patel fills her journals with watercolor splatters and half-finished poems, treating each page as a playground rather than a performance. She discovered that creative block dissolves when perfectionism exits the room. Try dedicating one page weekly to pure visual expression. Use colored pens to code different emotions in your entries. Create collages from magazine clippings that represent your hopes. Ira Progoff called this active imagination, and it often reveals truths that analytical writing conceals. Your journal becomes a living document when you embrace its multidimensional nature. Lists provide structure, visuals bypass mental barriers, and creative elements invite spontaneity. Together, they transform blank pages into a dynamic space where insight and inspiration collide, creating something uniquely yours, part diary, part art journal, part life map, completely authentic. Part 4. Notes to Self. When Amy Tan was struggling to write the Joy Luck Club, she found herself paralyzed by self-doubt. Her breakthrough came through a simple practice, leaving encouraging notes to herself in her journal margins. "You can do this," she wrote. "Remember your mother's stories matter." These brief messages became her lifeline, proof that sometimes the most powerful writing we do is for an audience of one, ourselves. The practice of writing notes to yourself transforms your journal from a record keeper into a supportive companion. Maya Angelou filled her notebooks with reminders like, "Courage is the most important virtue," written in bold letters across entire pages. These weren't mere platitudes, but anchor points during turbulent times. When doubt crept in, she could flip through pages and rediscover her own wisdom. Consider how you speak to your closest friend during their darkest moments. You offer compassion, remind them of their strengths, and help them see beyond current struggles. Yet many of us maintain an internal dialogue that's harsh and unforgiving. Writing notes to yourself creates a bridge between your present self and the wise counselor within. Research from Dr. Kristen Neff at the University of Texas shows that self-compassionate people recover faster from setbacks and maintain better mental health. Your journal becomes a training ground for this practice. Try writing brief affirmations in margins. "This feeling will pass," or "Remember how you handled last month's challenge." These messages accumulate like deposits in an emotional bank account. Some people use sticky notes strategically placed throughout their journals. Business executive Sarah Lewis discovered this technique during a particularly stressful merger. She began leaving yellow notes on random pages. Trust your instincts, and you've survived 100% of your worst days. Months later, stumbling across these messages felt like receiving encouragement from a dear friend. The key lies in specificity and timing. Generic affirmations often feel hollow, but personalized reminders carry weight. Remember how proud you felt after completing the marathon hits differently than you can do anything. Write these notes when you're feeling strong and clear-headed, creating resources for inevitable difficult moments. Olympic swimmer Katie Ledecky writes performance reminders in her training log. Feel the water, trust your stroke. These aren't just technical notes, but emotional anchors that reconnect her to her purpose during grueling practices. Your future self is counting on your present wisdom. What would you want to remember 6 months from now? What truth do you need to hear when anxiety strikes? Write it down. Date it. Let it wait patiently for the moment when you need those exact words in your own handwriting, reminding you who you really are. Chapter 3. Beyond the Surface, Going Deeper. Part 1. Unpacking the Day. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings was grappling with the company's transformation from DVD by mail to streaming, he maintained a practice that many executives overlook. He spent 20 minutes each evening writing about his day. Not planning or strategizing, but simply processing what had happened, what he felt, and what patterns he noticed emerging. This evening ritual of unpacking your day through writing creates something remarkable. It transforms scattered experiences into coherent understanding. Think of your daily experiences like ingredients scattered across a kitchen counter after cooking. Without organizing them, they remain chaotic remnants. Evening journaling becomes the process of cleaning up, putting things in their proper place, and understanding what you created. Maya Angelou described her evening writing sessions as conversations with myself about the day. She would sit in a simple room with just a Bible, a thesaurus, and yellow legal pads, reviewing not just events but the emotions that accompanied them. This practice helped her process everything from small irritations to major life transitions, creating the emotional clarity that would later inform her powerful memoirs. The magic happens in the questions you ask yourself. Instead of simply recounting events chronologically, try exploring deeper layers. What surprised you today? Where did you feel most alive? When did you notice tension in your body, and what was happening around you? Virginia Woolf's diaries reveal this layered approach. She wrote about London weather and dinner parties, but also about the cotton wool of daily existence hiding deeper truths. Research from the University of Texas shows that people who write about their daily experiences for just 15 minutes improve both emotional regulation and immune function. Dr. James Pennebaker's studies demonstrate that the act of translating experiences into words literally rewires how we process events, making them less emotionally charged and more integrated into our understanding. Consider keeping your evening journal simple. Oprah Winfrey's practice involves 3 questions. What brought me joy today? What challenged me? What am I grateful for? This framework prevents the common trap of harsh self-criticism while ensuring you capture both struggles and successes. The key lies in gentle honesty rather than brutal analysis. You're not writing a performance review or preparing for judgment. You're having a quiet conversation with yourself, the way you might debrief with a trusted friend over tea. Some days will offer profound insights. Others will simply help you release the day's small frustrations and acknowledge its modest victories. This practice builds something invaluable over time, a relationship with your own inner wisdom. Each evening's reflection becomes a thread in understanding your patterns, preferences, and growth. You begin recognizing what energizes versus drains you, what triggers certain responses, and how you navigate challenges most effectively. Part 2. When Words Run Out. Virginia Woolf spent months staring at blank pages, her mind clouded by what she called cotton wool. During these periods, she discovered that forcing words created only frustration, but approaching the page with curiosity rather than expectation often broke the spell. When traditional journaling fails us, we need different tools, ones that honor our resistance rather than fight it. The moment you sit down to write and nothing comes, your body tenses. Your inner critic awakens with familiar refrains. "You have nothing interesting to say," or "This is pointless." Julia Cameron, author of The Artist's Way, experienced this resistance so intensely that she developed morning pages specifically to outlast it. She wrote 3 pages of stream-of-consciousness text daily, regardless of content quality. Most days produced complaints about the weather or grocery lists. Yet within this seemingly meaningless flow, insights emerged. When words feel impossible, try writing about the impossibility itself. "I don't want to write today because" often leads somewhere unexpected. Anne Frank did this frequently, beginning entries with protests about her circumstances before finding her way into deeper reflection. This meta-writing acknowledges your resistance while gently moving through it. Drawing becomes another pathway when language fails. Linda Berry, who teaches writing workshops, encourages students to sketch their emotional state using simple shapes and colors. A tight knot might represent anxiety. Jagged lines could capture frustration. These images often communicate what words cannot reach, creating bridges back to written expression. Maya Angelou famously wrote lying down, surrounded by legal pads and a bottle of sherry. When inspiration seemed distant, she changed her physical environment entirely. Sometimes she wrote in hotel rooms, believing the unfamiliar space would jar loose new thoughts. This practice of environmental shifts can restart stalled creativity. Free writing serves as another gentle persistence tool. Set a timer for 10 minutes and write continuously, even if you repeat "I don't know what to write" dozens of times. Joan Didion often began this way, letting her hand move across the page until genuine thoughts emerged. The key lies in maintaining forward motion rather than creating meaningful content. Reading prompts can also reignite motivation. What would I tell my younger self today? Or what am I avoiding thinking about? These questions bypass our usual mental patterns, accessing thoughts we might not consciously recognize. Remember that silence forms part of the creative cycle. Even prolific writers like Stephen King acknowledge fallow periods. Your journal doesn't demand daily performance. It waits patiently for your return, ready to receive whatever you offer: complaints, sketches, fragments, or profound insights. The blank page judges nothing and forgives everything. Part 3. Turning challenges into insights. When your world crumbles around you, when anxiety grips your chest like a vice, when grief threatens to swallow you whole, these moments of profound difficulty contain within them the seeds of your greatest personal growth. The journal becomes your most steadfast companion during these dark passages, not because it offers easy answers, but because it holds space for your pain while helping you discover wisdom you never knew you possessed. Maya Angelou discovered this truth during her darkest period. After experiencing trauma as a child, she fell silent for years, unable to speak. When she finally began writing, she transformed that silence into some of the most powerful literature of our time. Her journals became the bridge between her wounded self and her healed voice. She wrote, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." The journal provides the safe harbor where these untold stories can finally surface and breathe. The practice of dialoguing with your fears through writing offers a particularly powerful technique for transformation. Rather than running from anxiety or depression, you engage in written conversation with these feelings. Write "Dear Fear" at the top of a page, then allow fear to speak its truth. Next page, "Dear Self," and respond with compassion. Dr. James Pennebaker's research at the University of Texas revealed that people who wrote about traumatic experiences for just 15 minutes over 4 consecutive days showed improved immune function and reduced doctor visits months later. Consider reframing your mistakes through what Kathleen Adams calls clustering. Write your perceived failure in the center of a page, then surround it with every possible learning, skill gained, or growth that emerged from that experience. Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, credits her father's dinner table tradition of asking about failures as the key to her resilience. Her journals became the place where she transformed rejections into stepping stones. Your journal doesn't judge the raw emotions you pour onto its pages. It accepts your rage, your confusion, your hopelessness without flinching. But something remarkable happens in this process of honest expression. Patterns emerge. Strengths you forgot you possessed resurface. Solutions begin forming in the margins. The healing doesn't happen overnight. Some days you'll write the same pain repeatedly. That repetition serves a purpose, like water gradually wearing smooth a jagged stone. Each telling loosens the grip slightly. Each written word carries away a fragment of the burden. Your journal becomes the place where challenges slowly, patiently transform into the insights that will guide you forward. Part 4. Secret Gardens of the Mind. What if the most profound discoveries of your life were already present in your mind, waiting in the quiet spaces between your thoughts? Scientists at Harvard Medical School found that people who recorded their dreams showed 23% greater problem-solving abilities than those who didn't, suggesting our sleeping minds hold more wisdom than we typically recognize. Your journal can become a sanctuary for the ephemeral, those gossamer thoughts that flutter through consciousness before vanishing. Mary Shelley famously conceived Frankenstein from a vivid dream she captured in her diary. She wrote of a pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together, transforming a nocturnal vision into literary immortality. Dreams arrive as messengers from our unconscious, often speaking in symbols and metaphors. Keep a notebook beside your bed. When you wake, even at 3 a.m., jot down fragments, colors, emotions, strange juxtapositions. Don't worry about coherence. A single word like purple elephant or grandmother's keys can later bloom into understanding. Jung spent years documenting his dreams and found recurring themes that guided his psychological theories. He discovered that seemingly random dream images often connected to unresolved conflicts or emerging insights about his life's direction. But this inner landscape extends beyond sleep. Throughout your day, fleeting thoughts and intuitive nudges arise. The sudden urge to call an old friend, an inexplicable feeling about a decision, or images that appear unbidden while washing dishes. These whispers deserve attention. Try the image capture technique. When a persistent thought or visual returns repeatedly, write it down without analyzing. Note where you were, what you were doing, how it felt. Patterns emerge over time. Perhaps that recurring image of a locked door represents your resistance to a new opportunity, or those dreams about flying signal your desire for greater freedom. Virginia Woolf filled her journals with what she called cotton wool moments, seemingly insignificant instances that later revealed profound meaning. She wrote about the texture of sunlight on a wall or the sound of waves, discovering that these small observations often contain the seeds of her greatest literary works. Consider your intuitive inklings as seeds requiring patient cultivation. When something feels important, but you can't explain why, honor that knowing. Write about the sensation in your body, the quality of the feeling, the circumstances surrounding it. Your journal becomes an archaeologist's tool, carefully excavating the treasures buried in consciousness. These explorations don't require interpretation. Simply witnessing and recording creates space for understanding to unfold naturally. What images visited your dreams last night? What thoughts have been quietly persistent today? These questions invite you to tend the fertile wilderness of your inner world, where creativity and wisdom grow in the shadows, waiting for your gentle attention to bring them into the light. Chapter 4. Life by Design, Shaping the Future. Part 1. Setting Intentions. When Oprah Winfrey began writing down her intentions each morning in 1996, she had no idea this simple practice would transform not just her day, but her entire approach to living. 27 years later, she credits this ritual with helping her build a media empire while staying grounded in her values. Unlike rigid goals that demand specific outcomes, intentions create space for growth and discovery. The difference between goals and intentions mirrors the contrast between a GPS route and a compass direction. Goals say, arrive at this exact destination by this precise time. Intentions whisper, head toward what matters most, adjusting course as wisdom emerges. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings set the intention to prioritize long-term thinking over quarterly profits in 2007, he wasn't committing to specific numbers. He was choosing a guiding principle that would inform thousands of future decisions, ultimately revolutionizing entertainment. Your journal becomes the sacred space where intentions take shape. Unlike mental commitments that drift like morning fog, written intentions gain substance and staying power. Research from Dominican University shows people who write down their goals are 42% more likely to achieve them. But intentions operate differently than goals. They work on your consciousness, gradually shifting how you see opportunities and make choices. The practice starts simply. Each morning, before the world demands your attention, ask yourself, what do I want to bring to this day? Maybe it's curiosity during a difficult conversation. Perhaps it's patience with yourself while learning something new. Write it down, not as a commandment, but as a gentle reminder of who you're becoming. Maya Angelou kept a hotel room solely for writing intentions and reflections, visiting it each morning before 6:30 a.m. She understood that intentions require both solitude and consistency to take root. Her practice wasn't about perfection. Some days she wrote pages, others just a single sentence. The power lived in the returning, the daily choice to reconnect with what mattered most. Revisiting your written intentions reveals their true magic. Last month's intention to listen more than I speak might show up in surprising ways. A deeper friendship, a breakthrough at work, an unexpected insight about yourself. These connections often remain invisible until you flip back through journal pages and witness the quiet transformation unfolding. When life shifts directions, your intentions can adapt without the harsh judgment that accompanies abandoned goals. The entrepreneur who intended to build meaningful connections might pivot from networking events to one-on-one coffee meetings when the pandemic hit. The intention remained constant while the expression evolved. This flexibility makes intention setting particularly powerful during transitions. Whether starting a new job, ending a relationship, or moving to a different city, intentions provide continuity amid change. They become the thread weaving through your story, connecting who you were with, who you're becoming. One written word at a time. Part 2. Your Roadmap Pages. When Ryder Carroll, creator of the bullet journal method, found himself struggling with attention deficit disorder in design school, he discovered something remarkable. Traditional planners failed him because they were rigid, but when he began creating his own flexible system of dots, dashes, and simple symbols, his scattered thoughts transformed into actionable plans. This discovery would eventually help millions of people worldwide turn their journals into powerful planning instruments. Your journal can become more than a repository for thoughts. It can serve as mission control for your life's most important ventures. Think of it as your personal flight plan, complete with departure points, waypoints, and destinations, but with the crucial ability to adjust course when weather conditions change. The beauty of journal-based planning lies in its organic nature. Unlike digital tools that compartmentalize your life into preset categories, your journal allows ideas to flow naturally across pages. You might start mapping out a career transition and find yourself sketching related financial goals in the margins, or discover that your weekend project connects to a larger creative vision you hadn't previously recognized. Consider how architect Sarah Susanka planned her revolutionary not-so-big house movement. She began with simple journal sketches, questioning why Americans needed increasingly larger homes. Her handwritten reflections evolved into detailed architectural principles, then into best-selling books that transformed residential design. Her journal became the laboratory where radical ideas took their first tentative steps toward reality. The most effective planning pages blend structure with flexibility. Create timelines that breathe, map milestones that can shift without breaking. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings first outlined the company's streaming strategy, he couldn't have predicted the exact technological developments that would make it possible. But his underlying vision remained constant, while tactics adapted to emerging opportunities. Your roadmap pages should accommodate both the methodical and the magical. Document practical steps alongside wild possibilities. Write down that promotion timeline, but also explore what would happen if you started your own company instead. Plan your garden layout, then imagine what it might look like as a small urban farm feeding your neighbors. The most successful planners understand that setbacks aren't failures, but course corrections. When author Cheryl Strayed hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, her original plan disintegrated within days. Her boots were wrong, her pack was too heavy, and she was vastly underprepared. But her journal captured both the chaos and the emerging strength that would define her transformative journey. Her written reflections became the foundation for Wild, demonstrating how plans can evolve into something more meaningful than originally imagined. Use your journal to test scenarios safely. What if you moved to that different city? What if you changed careers at 40? What if you started that creative project you've been postponing? Write these possibilities into existence, explore their implications, and watch how putting dreams on paper makes them feel suddenly achievable. Your roadmap pages aren't prophecies carved in stone. They're living documents that grow with you, capturing both your aspirations and your wisdom as you discover what truly matters along the way. Part 3. Gratitude in the Margins. In 2008, researcher Robert Emmons at UC Davis discovered something remarkable. People who wrote down 5 things they were grateful for each week experienced measurably higher levels of optimism, better sleep, and stronger immune systems compared to those who recorded hassles or neutral events. What started as a simple list-making exercise transformed participants' entire relationship with their daily experiences. The margins of your journal pages hold extraordinary power. While your main entries capture the day's events or explore deeper thoughts, those empty spaces around the edges become perfect homes for gratitude notes. A simple, "Grateful for morning coffee" scribbled beside Tuesday's entry, 3 small hearts drawn next to a difficult paragraph, a quick sketch of the sunset you almost missed. Sarah, a nurse in Portland, began adding gratitude fragments to her journal during the pandemic's darkest months. Between exhausting shift notes, she'd jot tiny observations. Patient in 3B smiled today. Coworker brought homemade soup. Rain sounds peaceful. 6 months later, flipping through those pages revealed a completely different story than the one she remembered living. The gratitude notes hadn't erased the difficulty, but they'd created a parallel narrative of resilience and connection. Research consistently shows that gratitude practices rewire our brains for positivity, but the magic happens in the specifics. Instead of generic thankfulness, focus on precise moments. The way afternoon light hit your kitchen counter, your child's laugh during a silly joke, the stranger who held the elevator. These micro moments, captured in margins, create what psychologist Barbara Fredrickson calls positive emotional spirals. Consider establishing gratitude themes for different margins. Left margins for people who helped you, right margins for small pleasures, bottom spaces for lessons learned, even from difficult situations, top corners for nature observations. This system transforms every page into a treasure map of appreciation. Maya Angelou kept gratitude lists on napkins, grocery receipts, and journal margins throughout her life. She called them collected blessings and credited this practice with sustaining her through profound challenges. Her approach wasn't about forced positivity, but about training her attention toward life's persistent gifts. The beauty of margin gratitude lies in its flexibility. Some days you might fill every available space with appreciation. Other days, a single word or doodle suffices. Bad days might only yield "made it through," and that's perfectly valid gratitude too. The practice adapts to your capacity while slowly expanding your ability to notice abundance. Try this. For 1 week, commit to adding something grateful to every journal page's margins. Notice how this shifts both your writing and your daily awareness. You might find yourself unconsciously scanning for margin-worthy moments throughout the day, transforming ordinary experiences into conscious celebrations of life's unexpected generosity. Part 4. The Ongoing Story. When Virginia Woolf wrote, "Yet it is in our idleness, in our dreams, that the submerged truth sometimes comes to the top," she captured something essential about the journal's role in our lives. Your journal isn't a project with a deadline or a story that needs a tidy ending. It's a living document of becoming, as messy and magnificent as life itself. Consider how Maya Angelou approached her writing life. She kept journals for decades, never intending them to become books. Some entries became poetry, others sparked memoirs, but most simply existed as conversations with herself. When asked about her process, she described her journals as friends who don't judge. This friendship with our own pages creates something remarkable, a relationship that grows stronger with time rather than wearing thin. The most compelling aspect of journal writing lies in its refusal to be finished. Unlike other forms of writing that demand conclusions, your journal thrives on questions that lead to more questions. Last month's certainties become this month's curiosities. The person who wrote about heartbreak 6 months ago might barely recognize the resilient voice that emerges today. Ira Progoff, who developed the intensive journal method, worked with thousands of people over decades. He noticed that participants who returned to old entries often discovered patterns they'd missed entirely. One woman found strength she didn't know she possessed by reading her own words from difficult periods. A businessman recognized recurring themes that helped him make career decisions. The journal becomes both map and territory, documenting not just events but the evolving consciousness that experiences them. Your future self will thank you for the seemingly mundane entries you write today. The grocery lists, weather observations, and random thoughts create a texture of lived experience that major life events alone cannot capture. These details become time capsules, transporting you back to forgotten moments with startling clarity. Here's what makes journaling different from other forms of self-improvement. It doesn't promise to fix you because it doesn't assume you're broken. Instead, it offers companionship for the ongoing adventure of being human. Bad days get documented alongside good ones. Contradictions live comfortably next to certainties. As you continue writing, remember that every entry adds another thread to your personal narrative. Some threads will prove essential to the pattern, others will fade into background texture. You can't know which is which while you're writing, and that's exactly the point. The story reveals itself through the telling, not despite it. Your journal accompanies you wherever life leads, patient as a trusted friend, ready whenever you need to make sense of things. Keep writing. Your story is just beginning. Chapter 5, Journaling Together, Creating Connection. Part 1, Sharing the Journey. When Maya Rodriguez launched her first writing circle in a San Francisco coffee shop in 2018, she expected perhaps 3 or 4 neighbors to show up. Instead, 27 people crowded around mismatched tables, clutching journals and looking simultaneously terrified and hopeful. What happened next transformed how she understood the power of shared reflection. Journaling alongside others creates an entirely different experience than writing alone. The energy in Maya's circle was palpable. Participants found themselves writing more honestly, digging deeper, and discovering insights they never reached in private moments. Research by Dr. James Pennebaker at the University of Texas showed that people who share their reflective writing in supportive environments experience greater emotional breakthroughs than solo writers. The vulnerability of reading your words aloud to others can feel overwhelming at first. Yet something magical happens when you witness someone else's courage in sharing their truth. Anna Chen, a member of Maya's original group, recalls the evening she read an entry about her mother's death. "I thought I'd cry and fall apart," she says. "Instead, I felt held by these people who barely knew me but understood completely." Group journaling takes many forms. Some circles meet monthly to share favorite entries. Others exchange journals for a week, writing responses to each other's prompts. The Midnight Writers Project in Portland has members leave anonymous journal pages in public spaces, creating surprise connections throughout the city. Digital platforms have expanded these possibilities. The online community Journal Together connects writers globally, sharing daily prompts and celebrating milestones together. Members report feeling less isolated in their struggles and more inspired in their growth. Even within established relationships, journal sharing deepens connections. Best friends Sarah Kim and Janet Walsh have exchanged weekly journal letters for 15 years, creating an ongoing conversation that spans marriages, career changes, and cross-country moves. Their practice began during college separation anxiety, but evolved into something much richer. What strikes many participants is how witnessing others' journeys illuminates their own patterns. When you hear someone else grapple with similar challenges using different words, new perspectives emerge naturally. The mirror effect works both ways. Your story helps others recognize their own growth. But sharing requires intention and boundaries. Successful journal circles establish clear agreements about confidentiality and consent. Not every entry needs an audience, and the most profound communal journaling often happens when people feel completely free to withhold their most private thoughts. The act of writing, even in solitude, connects us to countless others who have faced similar crossroads. Your midnight worries echo across generations of journal writers. Your moments of joy join a vast chorus of human celebration. This awareness transforms the lonely page into a bridge between your experience and the larger human story we all share. Part 2. Learning from others. When Virginia Woolf filled her leather-bound volumes with fierce observations about creativity and consciousness, she wasn't just recording her thoughts, she was participating in an ancient conversation. Her pages became part of humanity's ongoing dialogue about what it means to be alive, think deeply, and struggle beautifully with existence. The journals of remarkable individuals offer us something precious: permission to explore our own depths. Anne Frank's diary revealed how an adolescent mind could find hope amid unimaginable darkness. Maya Angelou's reflections showed how trauma could transform into wisdom through the simple act of honest writing. These weren't superhuman beings. They were people who learned to pay attention to their inner lives and commit those observations to paper. Reading published journal excerpts changes how we approach our own pages. When Henry David Thoreau described his morning walks at Walden Pond, he demonstrated that the smallest observations could carry profound meaning. His detailed accounts of seasonal changes taught generations of journal writers that no moment is too ordinary to deserve attention. Similarly, Joan Didion's precise documentation of grief in The Year of Magical Thinking showed how raw honesty could create literature from life's most difficult passages. The practice of learning from others' reflections operates on multiple levels. Sometimes we discover new techniques. Anis Nin's stream of consciousness style or Leonardo da Vinci's habit of writing backwards might inspire us to experiment with unconventional approaches. Other times, we find emotional resonance. Reading how someone else processed loss, joy, or confusion can make our own experiences feel less isolating. Many successful journal writers maintain collections of inspiring passages. They copy favorite quotes into their own pages, respond to others' entries with their own thoughts, or use published excerpts as writing prompts. This isn't copying, it's conversation across time and space. Contemporary authors continue this tradition. Cheryl Strayed's detailed accounts of hiking the Pacific Crest Trail in Wild demonstrate how physical challenges can become opportunities for internal exploration. Elizabeth Gilbert's reflections in Eat, Pray, Love show how travel journaling can facilitate personal transformation. The key lies in approaching others' work with curiosity rather than comparison. Each journal writer develops their own voice through practice, and studying various approaches helps us discover what resonates with our authentic expression. Some writers prefer Rainer Maria Rilke's poetic introspection, while others connect with Benjamin Franklin's practical list-making approach. This exploration of others' journaling traditions reminds us that our private pages connect to something larger. Every honest entry joins a vast library of human experience, adding our unique voice to an ongoing conversation about consciousness, growth, and the search for meaning. When we write, we participate in this ancient practice of bearing witness to what it means to be human. Part 3. The Gift of Reflection. When researcher James Pennebaker conducted his groundbreaking studies at the University of Texas in the 1980s, he discovered something remarkable. Students who wrote about traumatic experiences for just 15 minutes a day showed measurable improvements in immune function and emotional well-being. What made the difference wasn't simply the act of writing. It was writing with the intention of processing and transforming their relationship to difficult experiences. This transformation happens most powerfully when we approach our journals as spaces for offering gifts of reflection. These gifts take many forms: letters we may never send, words of forgiveness we struggle to speak aloud, or expressions of gratitude that feel too vulnerable for everyday conversation. The page becomes a sacred container where we can safely explore the full spectrum of human emotion. Consider Maya Angelou's practice of writing letters to herself throughout her life, addressing her younger self with compassion and wisdom earned through experience. These private conversations became the foundation for her later memoirs, but their primary purpose was healing. She understood that putting complex feelings into words creates distance from pain and clarity about relationships that matter most. The beauty of this practice lies in its freedom from expectation. When poet Adrienne Rich wrote in her journal about her struggle with traditional marriage roles in the 1950s, she wasn't planning to share these thoughts publicly. She was simply creating space to understand her own experience. These private reflections later influenced her groundbreaking feminist poetry, but their initial gift was to Rich herself, permission to think thoughts that felt dangerous in her social context. This approach works equally well with positive emotions that feel too big for ordinary expression. Writing a detailed thank you letter to a teacher who changed your trajectory, describing exactly how their encouragement affected your choices, creates a profound experience, even if the letter remains in your journal. The act of articulating specific gratitude deepens your appreciation and often reveals connections you hadn't previously recognized. Forgiveness letters offer perhaps the most challenging yet rewarding form of reflective gift-giving. When singer Johnny Cash wrote about his struggles with addiction in private journals, he wasn't just documenting his experience. He was working towards self-forgiveness through honest acknowledgement of his actions and their consequences. These private conversations with himself became part of his recovery process, creating space for the compassion necessary for healing. The journal holds these gifts safely, allowing us to return to them when we're ready for deeper understanding. Sometimes reading our own words months later reveals growth we couldn't see in the moment. Other times, we discover that thoughts we believed were too painful to share have transformed into wisdom worth offering others. This practice of reflective gift-giving through writing creates profound shifts in how we relate to ourselves and others, transforming our journals into spaces of active healing rather than passive documentation. Part 4. Inviting New Beginnings. When Maria finished her final journal entry of December, she didn't simply close the notebook and place it on the shelf. Instead, she performed a small ritual she'd developed over years of practice. Lighting a candle, reading the first entry from January, and then writing a brief note to the person she'd become. This ceremony marked not just an ending, but an invitation to whatever version of herself was waiting to emerge. The beauty of journaling lies in its perpetual capacity for renewal. Unlike other practices that build linearly, journaling operates in cycles. Each blank page offers the same potential as the very first one you ever filled. Virginia Woolf understood this when she began new volumes throughout her life, often marking transitions with deliberate ceremony. She would write about the physical act of opening a fresh notebook, describing the texture of pages and the promise they held. Creating meaningful reset rituals transforms ordinary moments into significant thresholds. Some writers light incense when starting new journals. Others choose specific dates, birthdays, solstices, or anniversaries of important events. The ritual itself matters less than the intention behind it. You're signaling to yourself that this moment deserves attention, that you're ready to witness whatever wants to emerge. Seasonal reviews offer particularly powerful entry points for fresh beginnings. As autumn arrives, you might write about what you're ready to release. Winter invites reflection on what wants to hibernate and regenerate. Spring calls forth new growth, while summer celebrates what has flourished. These natural rhythms provide structure without rigidity, frameworks that support rather than constrain your writing. Consider how life transitions naturally invite new chapters. Starting a new job, moving homes, ending relationships, or beginning them, all create organic opportunities for journal renewal. The key is recognizing these moments and honoring them with intentional writing. One woman began a new notebook after her divorce, starting with a letter to her future self about the courage it took to begin again. The first page of any journal holds special power. Instead of diving into daily events, try writing about your hopes for this particular writing journey. What do you want to discover? What patterns are you ready to change? What dreams are you finally ready to acknowledge? These intentions become guideposts, subtle influences that shape how you approach each subsequent entry. Annual reflections create particularly meaningful milestone entries. Reading last year's dreams and comparing them to current reality often reveals growth you hadn't noticed. Sometimes you'll discover that what felt like failure was actually redirection towards something better suited to who you were becoming. Remember that every return to your journal after days, weeks, or even months away is itself a beginning. The pages don't judge your absence or demand explanations. They simply wait, ready to receive whatever you're prepared to offer. This infinite patience of the blank page reminds us that transformation doesn't follow schedules. It follows readiness. Your journal will witness countless beginnings throughout your life. Each one offers the same gift, the chance to meet yourself exactly where you are and invite whoever you're becoming to step forward.